Welcome to Tales from Flat Space, a podcast of science fiction and fantasy by yours truly, Gina A. Pond. Just know that the stories in this podcast may contain content that could be disturbing to some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. Colony, Part 3, Chaos, Chapter 48, Marcus. The Senate Intelligence Committee wasn't pleased about being kept in the dark so long, but they have agreed, in the interest of improving diplomatic relations, that we should continue working together, said the Deputy Director from the conference room's display screen. Do we know if the countermeasure is working yet? I nodded. Yes, from what we can see in the inner colonies and what we've been hearing from agents, a lot of the extremist groups in the outer colonies are seeing their money wells dry up. Our agents on New York colonies say that the group that took the blame for the bombing has gone to ground, and their political leaders have either been put in jail or have disappeared. Apparently, the Yakuza are filling the power vacuum there, and don't take too kindly to racists. The deputy nodded. When will we have more detailed information from the outer colonies? We'll have to wait for our usual networks to be sure. We could send agents to the outer colonies, but we don't have that many to spare. There were a lot of casualties on our end, Deputy. David nodded solemnly. I understand. Have you accounted for everyone yet? Jenny, who was sitting next to me, shook her head. Most of them. The only colony we couldn't verify the outcome for was a colony called Diana. What do you know about this colony? The demon came back without its pilot or the soldier tasked with the deployment, and I would like to know what possibly could have happened to them. The director and deputy both looked at each other. Diana is a matriarchal planet, originally founded by women who were feminist separatists on Earth. We sent in agents about 25 years ago. One of them was executed for helping transgender women, and the other toppled their government in one night, largely in retaliation. We had to extract her. They were on track about 5 years ago to become a Unity colony, but then sent a missive that they were withdrawing again. They've kept economic ties to Unity, but that's all. Jenny looked thoughtful for a long moment, as if putting something together. I need all your information on Diana, now. We don't know if the countermeasure got deployed, and I'm not leaving my people behind. We can't run the risk of their station, or planet, reinfecting the rest of Unity with older code. Jenny looked like a statue made of ice. The director stared at Jenny for a long moment. All right, she said, tapping her table. Musashi should be receiving the data now. I'm not sure if the Senate will approve of you going in with guns blazing, but Musashi is the only ship who can do anything quickly. I'll let Chairman Chi know. Data received, said Musashi. Jenny nodded. I'd have to concur with the Admiral on this, I added. I don't think Sun Tzu or the others will disagree. Also, we can't send Unity ships if they haven't deployed the countermeasure on Diana Station. I have already talked to my brother, and he fully supports us going to Diana's system, said Musashi. Jenny was staring at her tablet, but nodded. We will be there in 5 days. Sun Tzu will rendezvous with Lightbringer at the negotiation site for security. Will you make it back in time? Said the director. Jenny stared at her, but didn't say anything. The director blinked, then said, Forget I asked. Good luck. The screen went blank. Oh, Lord, that's what she meant, said Jenny to herself. What's wrong, Admiral? I asked. Remember the letter I got from my friend Marcia when we got the seed data? I nodded. You didn't tell me what was in it, though, and I didn't read it. I figured it was personal. Jenny grimaced. I thank you for that, but part of what she said in her letter was that she'd wish she could help me through the aftermath of New Harmony because she knew what I was going to be going through. She had wanted to warn me that I wouldn't be the same when I got back. She was right, of course, but she never told me how she knew. She tapped her tablet, then handed it to me. Her full name is Marcia Brooks. She was the agent that took down Diana the first time. What? I said, looking at the tablet. I read the report summary and whistled. Holy shit. Genocide, racism, gender essentialism, and lynchings? Fucking hell. Then I had a thought. Musashi-sensei, before we leave, ask Sensu if we have anyone in Survey who's an expert on Diana. There is an analyst who just started her internship on Sensu a month ago, who grew up on Diana, but became a Survey citizen several years ago, Musashi said. My brother is picketing her over now. A blonde woman appeared in the conference room, looking a bit dazed. Hello, she said. My apologies for the suddenness of your transfer, but we need information from you about Diana, said Jenny, all business. Oh, said the woman, and her face darkened. You're the Admiral, right? She asked. Jenny nodded. I'm Marcus Roner, also from the library. I said, what's your name? My name is Bridget. Does this have something to do with the op that started a few months ago? No one's really talking about it, but I do see reports. I also know some folks didn't come back. Yes, Jenny said. We've been able to account for all those who were sent except for the ones we sent to Diana. Bridget went pale, then sat down. Who did you send? What gender? The pilot was a woman and the courier was a man. The other woman took a deep breath. When I finally left about 10 years ago, the colony was just recovering from having its leadership killed by a UI operative named Marcia, who I know was on Lightbringer a couple of years or so ago. Those bitches were gender essentialists. I was hunted for being trans, and Marcia's sister Cheryl was able to smuggle me into the underground. Cheryl and her wife got caught, and they hanged them in front of Marcia. Marcia went crazy and killed the whole matriarchal council. I didn't know that until after I got off the planet and came to Survey. I thought Marcia had been thoroughly indoctrinated by them, but my aunt told me the truth. Bridget took a deep breath, closing her eyes briefly. I've heard from other refugees over the years. While they played nice with Unity for a while, rumor was that they started to enslave cisgender men and kill anyone who was transgender. Last I knew, they isolated themselves again and have gone against the immigration consent decree with Unity. She frowned. Your man is probably enslaved by now. With the pilot, well, they used to say they wouldn't kill another woman, but with what happened with Marcia, I just don't know how they'd handle someone they thought was a spy. I didn't think Jenny could look any more like an ice statue than she already did, in her white morning kimono and white sword, but she did. Mia, have Amy set Bridget up with quarters, please. She turned to Bridget. You'll need to stay here for the duration, as we've already started the jumps to Diana. Thank you for the information. I may ask you more questions later. Jenny stood and went for the door, then stopped and said, I'd save more than my officers if I could, Bridget. I know, Bridget said, as Jenny turned and left the room. Now what? The analyst said. How about I show you to your room, and then we get you up to speed. Since you'll be with us for this part of the op, there's no reason I can't read you in on it. I took up my tablet. Musashi-sensei, is her room near mine? Yes, I have sent the location to your tablet. Welcome aboard, Bridget, he said. Thank you, Musashi-sensei, she said, and we left the conference room. Can you and Mia confirm that the countermeasure wasn't deployed? Asked Jenny when we reached the Diana station. Yes, I said. The bridge controls lit up for me as one of the bridge officers gave up their station. I'm not detecting the markers from the countermeasure, said Musashi. Chaos is blocking me from getting any other information. I nodded. Yep, it's starting to fight us, Admiral. Right, Jenny said. What's the crew complement? 20, Musashi said. Only 20? I asked. That station can hold at least 2,000. Jenny turned to me. I take it that deploying the countermeasure now would be useless? We could try, but according to the data Musashi-sensei is getting, we don't have enough time before it transmits out system again. A simple yes would have been sufficient, Marcus, she said. Mia, picket the crew off and put them in the cargo bay 10. Tell Amy to go and secure our guests. Yes, Admiral, Musashi said. Crew picketed. Deploy the gamma drones. I want there to be nothing bigger than an atom left, the Admiral said. I turned and stared at her as the rest of the bridge went silent. I'd only thought of her rank as a promotion, but seeing her now, I knew that she truly was the Admiral in all of her being. It was terrifying as it was beautiful. I wonder if she knows how much she's changed from even a year ago, I thought. Understood. Deploying gamma drones. Moving the ship to a safe distance, Musashi replied. The screen winked out for a moment, then showed the station at a distance with a semicircle of large drones around it. Suddenly, there was a bright flash of light. When it subsided, there was nothing left of the station but a bright, fading cloud. Shit, I whispered, staring in wonder and disbelief. I wasn't the only one. It took me a minute to notice that the Admiral had come over to stand in front of me. Marcus, confirm the planetary server targets with Mia and whatever maps you can find of the surface. I'll be in the cargo bay greeting our guests. There was an otherworldly glimmer of anger in her eyes. I had some pity for the Diana station crew. Not much, but a little. Yes, Admiral, I said, as I watched her turn and leave the bridge. I let out a breath that I didn't know I'd been holding. I knew Musashi Admirals often became the stuff of legends, but right then I knew Jenny would be much more than simply legendary. Chapter 49. Amy. You'll need to talk to them, Amy. They will respond negatively to masculine persons, said Musashi-sensei through my earpiece. I still have the pickets on them. Thanks, Sensei, I said quietly, then turned to the unit I'd assembled. All right, team, consider these folks hostile and batshit crazy. Hoods down. I don't respond well to masculine folks, and I'd rather none of you become a target. Yes, sir, they replied, as they put their hoods down. Okay, let's go, I said, and we entered the cargo bay. The soldiers spread out in a circle around the 20 women from the station who stared at us as we walked in. They all raised small crossbows. They've gotta be kidding, said Yohei, who was standing next to me. I agreed with Yohei, but didn't say anything. The women glared at him. Yohei, secure their tech, I ordered. Yes, ma'am. Yohei said, Picket secure. The pickets floated around them. There were small pops and screams of surprise as all the women's wrist comms were disabled. Then Yohei motioned to another soldier who took all of the crossbows. My headset beeped. The Admiral is on her way, Amy, said Musashi. I nodded. One of the women stepped forward. I demand to know who the hell you are and to speak to whoever's in charge of this vessel. How dare you kidnap us? I raised an eyebrow. Pretty rich coming from slavers, I thought. Out loud I said, I am the executive officer of this vessel, and my admiral will be with you shortly. Admiral, the woman said, taking in our uniforms and the black walls. You're... She didn't have a chance to finish the sentence as the admiral walked in. She offered a stark contrast to the black walls and the black armor the rest of the soldiers wore. She looked like a ghost, dressed in her all-white mourning kimono with her white sword around her waist and her pale blonde hair tied in a top knot with a white band. The other soldiers bowed and stepped back. Some of the women we were holding looked terrified. The Admiral stopped beside me. How are our guests? Cranky, Admiral, I replied. Understandable, she said. She stepped forward and said, Who is your leader? The woman who had made the demand stepped forward. I am, she said, lifting her chin in defiance. Your name? Falcon. Well, Falcon, to answer your questions, you are on the survey ship Musashi, and I am the Admiral. It's clear that your planet has reverted to fascism again and broken your unity consent decree. Survey? Fucking cesspit of faggots and tranny lovers, Falcon snarled. She gave the Admiral a long look, then narrowed her eyes. I remember you. You were on the news. You're the trainee that took out the New Harmonists. howl like a man. Destroy one government, then go after a peaceful government of women. The woman spat in the Admiral's face. There was the sound of pulse rifles being lifted and a deadly silence, but the Admiral held up her hand. A hand towel appeared via picket. She wiped the spit off her face, then dropped the towel on the floor. At ease, the Admiral ordered. The soldiers lowered their weapons reluctantly. Mia, she said. One of the large wall screens of the cargo bay lit up, showing Diana Station surrounded by large drones. There was a large flash of light, then a bright cloud appeared where the station had been. Falcon and the other women gasped, all of them looking terrified. You can't do that, Falcon roared. We have rights. I can, and I have. That was 10 minutes ago. I suppose you had rights in unity until you defied the consent decree and began slave running. Now, besides the fact that we had to destroy your station to stop our rogue computer program, we can't allow you to keep enslaving men and lynching transgender persons. That goes against both Survey and Unity law. She was a wall of ice in front of Falcon. Oh, and I have proof that you negotiated with the new Harmonists in order to get more male slaves, including their exiles. I'd say your claim of being a peaceful government of women is quite false. Holy shit. No wonder the Admiral's so mad, I thought, as she continued to speak. Now, to contain your poison, both in ideology and the computer program that you prevented us from stopping, I will be... How do you say it? Yes. Bombing your planet back to the Stone Age. I'll be merciful and let you watch from orbit. Then my soldiers will drop you off dirt side and collect our people who you are holding. Falcon's face distorted in rage, and she rushed at the Admiral. The Admiral sighed, neatly sidestepping so the woman fell flat on her face. I tried not to laugh. She's going to regret that, I thought. The woman got back up and tried again, but the Admiral just shook her head, sidestepped again, then grabbed the other woman's arm, locking it behind her. Let go of me! Yelled Falcon. Oh, I'll let go of you in a moment, fascist, the Admiral said with a quiet and deadly calm. But I'm going to give you a message to give to the rest of your people. If any of you try to leave your planet, we will come for you. If you try to contact anyone off planet or run slaves again, we will come for you. And when we do come for you, we will take your slaves and your innocent children, then eradicate the rest of you. This tranny will be watching you with my finger on the button for as long as I live. Do you understand? The Admiral's face was as cold and remote as a snowy plain. Falcon, looking terrified, nodded. She didn't speak again. Good. Pickets, sedate. The pickets flew at the women, and they all dropped ungracefully to the floor. Falcon sagged in the Admiral's grip, and the Admiral lowered her to the floor, too. Then she marched over to me. Get them in the Demon and have them watch as I deploy the gammas and the nukes for the EMP. Then take them down to the planet and see if you can find our people. Yes, Admiral. I looked down at the sedated women. They really took slaves from New Harmonists? I asked. They're just two sides of the same coin, Amy, she said, putting a hand on my shoulder. Good luck, Commander. I'll be on the bridge. Stay safe and find our people. I nodded. And if I can rescue others? Take who you can, but don't stay too long. They may not have tech weapons, but large crossbows can still kill you. Yes, Admiral, I said. The Admiral nodded with a grave look, then left the cargo bay. All right, folks, you heard the Admiral. Let's get these bitches into the Demon. Yes, ma'am, they responded, and none too gently got the woman loaded. Pickets, wake. The pickets dropped to the sedated women, delivering the counteragent. Yohei held out his hand and ordered the pickets back for storage. I wasn't all that sad that they would have monumental hangovers from the sedatives. They all groaned as they woke up. Hello again, I said loudly and excessively cheerfully, which made a few of them clutch their heads. As you can see on the screen over here, we're in high orbit above Diana. Are you ready for the show? I said with a smile. One of the women stared at me. She's not really going to bomb our planet, is she? Spoiler, sweetie. Why ruin the surprise? The Dianics all turned to the screen, none of them looking happy. After a moment, there were bright flashes of light all around the planet. So, those were the nukes delivering the EMP to take out all your tech. Oh, don't worry, the Admiral is very good at what she does, so your planet will only suffer from the EMP, not the radiation. The women didn't say anything. Oh, look, here comes the gamma lasers to take out your data centers. Physics is pretty incredible, isn't it? Did you know that the laser looks like lightning when you're on the planet? It's very precise lightning, though. Unfortunately, there'll be some collateral damage from that. Can't be helped. However, since it's close to dinner time in the city, we hope to minimize unnecessary death. Sorry about destroying your historical records, but personally I'd say good riddance to bad rubbish. The other soldiers in the cabin with me were trying hard not to snicker at my jovial tone. I turned towards the door of the pilot's compartment. Play it again, Thomas, so they see the full effect. I'm afraid I was talking to them during the best parts. They were probably distracted. Thomas complied. Again the lasers flared, and there were 4 bright flashes on the screen as the data centers were vaporized. I gave them my best smile. Well, now that's done, shall we head down to the planet? I asked, not expecting an answer. The 20 women in their seats just glared at me. Falcon looked as if she wanted to kill someone. I grinned at them as I tapped my headset. Thomas, take us down, I ordered. Yes, ma'am, he said, as I strapped into my seat for landing. We landed in the center of the capital in a large park. The women were dragged out of the Demon to a scene of utter chaos. It was still hot from the lasers, and we could see a smoking crater at one end of the large park. We let the 20 women go, all of whom ran as soon as the soldiers let go of them. I waved my unit over to me. Yohei, do you have our people's signal? Yohei nodded. Alan's on the outskirts of the city. I'm not picking up Val's. Okay, then let's go get Alan and we'll go from there. Thomas, bring us over to where Alan's being held, as close to the building as possible. No use walking in this mess, I ordered. We all piled back into the Demon as the door closed. There were pings off the hull, and the crossbow arrow came through the closing door. Shit, I yelled, ducking. Any damage, Thomas? No, thankfully it looks like they don't know exactly where to aim. Melanie picked up the arrow. Heavy crossbow, Amy. They won't be able to damage the Demon, but could certainly damage our armor. Right. Stay alert, folks. We have a bunch of pissed off folks out there, and we're about to make them even madder. All of the soldiers nodded. We watched the screen as Thomas dropped the Demon in front of a long, low building. He's in there? Someone said. Looks like a horse barn. Yeah, towards the far end, said Yohei. There was swearing and murmurs from the soldiers. Thomas, Marco, guard the Demon. The rest of you, let's move out. We left the Demon. The field in front of the building was empty. Thomas had dropped us in a large square with shops around it and a large platform in the middle. There were women outside the shops, talking to their neighbors. Some saw us and ran back into their houses. I ordered my unit into the long building, not waiting to see what those women would come back out with. The large double doors of the building opened onto even more chaos. There were some men beating the guards, but most were standing around dazed or still in stalls like animals. My God, said Yohei. The men who were beating the guards stopped, dropped the unconscious women, and looked at us. I put up my helmet and said, Any of you who want to leave and go to Survey, come with us. I motioned to Darren, who put his own helmet up. Darren, get anyone who's coming with us out of here and onto the Demon. Yohei and I need to look for Alan. Yes, ma'am. He turned to me and said quietly, Do we have room for them all? We can only handle 150. Yohei? Yohei looked at his tablet. There's 110 men in here. It'll be tight, and getting back is going to suck, but we can do it. Right, said Darren, who turned to the enslaved men. All right, whoever's coming, come over here. I let the others take care of the other men as Yohei and I opened stalls and told the occupants to go to the main doors. The men, a lot of whom were naked, blinked at me and Yohei. Some did what they were told, walking down the hall in a daze. Here, said Yohei finally, and opened the last stall. Alan was huddled, naked, in the corner. His eyes, when he saw me, went wild, and he curled up tighter. Yohei didn't hesitate, and he went over to kneel next to him. Alan, it's me, Yohei, from Musashi. We've come to get you. Yohei, is it really you? Are you real? He said in a small voice that broke my heart and stoked my anger. Yeah, he said, gently reaching out to touch Alan. When Yohei's hand touched him, Alan started sobbing. They killed Val, Yohei. Just shot an arrow into her chest and... Yohei took him in his arms. Okay, come on, Alan. It's all right now. I've got you. Let's get you home, okay? Yohei helped the other man to stand, and we started walking towards the exit. Commander, you need to get out here, Thomas said into my headset. You got him? I asked Yohei. Thomas needs me at the demon. Yeah, go on, he said, and I ran to the entrance, past where Darren was sending men in groups to the demon. I tapped my headset. What is it, Thomas? There's a young girl demanding to go with us. She says she knows what happened to our people. Right, I'm almost there, I said. As I neared the door of the demon, a crossbow bolt flew by my head. There were a bunch of women on horses coming across the field where we had landed. I tapped my headset again to wide comms and said, We've got company, hurry up. I came around to the demon's door and saw a young girl ducking another bolt. Get in the demon! I yelled at her, and she did as I ordered. I lifted my pulse rifle and started firing, picking off riders one by one. The other soldiers joined me as their group of captives entered the demon. The formation of riders started to fall apart, and the horses, terrified by the pulse weapons, began running in all directions. One woman at the front, wielding a recurve bow instead of the usual heavy crossbow, was more tenacious than the others. She kept shooting at us even after all the others had fallen. I flattened myself against the demon and tapped my headset. Darren, do we have them all? One more group, he said. I turned to enter the demon, but heard hoofbeats behind me. Time seemed to slow as I heard the twang, and something slammed in my shoulder. There was the sound of a pulse pistol and a yell. Shit, I thought. I tried to get up on my own, but my body wasn't cooperating. Someone lifted me up and pulled me through the demon's doors, yelling for Thomas to get us off the planet. They laid me down on the floor on my stomach and said, Don't move, Commander. You have a pretty gnarly arrow stuck in you. Fucking hell, Yohei said. That's all the universe needs, fascist Amazons. I started to laugh and pain shot through my arm. Oh God, Yohei, don't make me laugh, I groaned. Are we in the air? I asked him. Yes, ma'am. How many did we free? 90, I think. Some of them wouldn't come, and some of the others wanted to stay and fight for their friends. I get that. Who's hurt? You, Melanie, Bryce, and Darren. You and Melanie have arrow wounds. Bryce and Darren fell trying to get one of the last of the slaves out. Bryce has a twisted ankle, and I think Darren will have a concussion because he hit his head. No one's dead, though. I let out a breath. Right. The medic's going to tend to you now, Yohei said, as he left. Someone else sat down next to me as the demon began to rumble through the upper atmosphere. I'm going to give you a sedative for now, and I'll sort out your shoulder once we're in space. I nodded. I felt something cool against my neck, then fell asleep. When I woke up, I could feel that we were in space, but still moving at 1G. I had been lifted to a bunk and stripped of my armor. My shoulder began to throb, making me groan. I heard someone come over. Don't try and get up by yourself, Commander, the medic said. I've put a healing patch on the wound, so your shoulder will be fine, but I'll want to have the doctors double-check it once we get back to Musashi. I nodded. I need the toilet, I said. The medic didn't say anything, just helped me off the bunk and into the demon's toilet. I could see the former slaves sitting all around the demon in various states of shock, some on bunks, some on the floor, many rubbing their necks as they stood. In the corner, where the printers were, there was a man sitting next to a pile of chains, putting them one by one into the recycler. Slave collars, my mind filled in for me. Fucking hell. After taking care of necessities, the medic led me to one of the seats and handed me a large nutrition shake. Tell Yohei I'm awake, would you? I asked. They nodded and went into the command compartment. Yohei came out of the pilot's compartment, then beckoned to someone to come with him. A young girl carrying an overly large tote bag followed him. I sipped on my shake as they made their way through the demon. "Who's this?" I asked. "Her name is Athena, and she saw what happened to Alan and Val," Yohei said. He nodded to Athena. Yeah, I was at my mentor's shop when this Sid and this woman came down the road. The Sid asked me for directions to the library, and I was surprised because Sids aren't supposed to talk to women. Then my mentor came out and put her crossbow on them until the matriarch came." The girl rummaged through her bag and pulled out a tablet with a survey data key stuck in it. Yohei took it from her. "I had video on here, but I don't know if it survived. Anyway, the matriarch and the protection collective came and collared the Sid, then said that they didn't like Outworlders. They shot the woman in the heart. They always told me in school that women don't kill other women, but the matriarch did. She just shot her, just because she wasn't from our planet. And my mentor stood there and watched. So I ran away. My real mentor, Jana, told me that not all the women on Diana are good, and now I know she was right. I was at her house near the stables when the flash of light happened and it got hot. I was outside gardening and I think I fell over. But when I got up and looked around, I saw the shuttle land in front of the stables. I grabbed my stuff and ran. I saw you taking away slaves, and when the Sid I saw came out with you, I knew I had to tell you what happened." Yohei finished examining the tablet. "I think it's one of the Chaos Keys, Commander. I'll have to have Musashi-sensei take a look at it. Or maybe that guy from the library." "Oh," Athena said, "I also have this." She rummaged in her bag again and brought out a survey wristcom, handing it to Yohei. "The Sid dropped this and the data key in an alley before they took him." "It's definitely one of ours, Commander," Yohei confirmed. "Thank you, Athena, for letting us know," I said. "You know you'll probably never be able to go back to Diana now, right?" She nodded. "I don't want to go back. It was wrong." I nodded. "Can I ask you a question?" "Yeah." "Why do you call the men Sids?" That's what they are?" She shrugged. One of the former slaves who had been listening gave a hollow laugh. "SDs, Commander. Sperm donors." Athena went wide-eyed, then her cheeks flushed bright red. I looked her in the eyes and said, "Athena, there are a lot of things you will need to unlearn, and the first will be that you will never use the term Sid again. They are men. Also, considering the other women we encountered from your planet, you will never, ever use the word tranny or faggot. Do you understand?" The girl gulped and nodded. "Yes, ma'am." "Good. Yohei, set up a schedule for showers and make sure all our passengers are as comfortable as they can be while we head back. Thank all the gods there are that we took the cargo demon." "I know, right?" he replied. "Go ahead and rest, ma'am. I'll wake you later." "Thanks, Yohei," I said, and he went back to the front of the demon. Athena just stood there looking a little lost and very young. I felt sorry for her, since her whole world just crashed down around her ears. Almost literally. "If you don't mind, Athena, I'm going to get some sleep now. I'll talk to you more later, okay?" Sure, but... Okay, but... What do I do now?" I thought for a moment. "Ask Yohei to give you a copy of a story called The Seven Siblings. He'll know what you're talking about. It's a story of how Survey came to be. You might as well start learning the history of your new home." She nodded and went to find Yohei. I sighed and laid back down on my bunk. Poor kid, I thought. Chapter 50. The Admiral. It was ship's night, and I walked along Musashi's halls, thinking. My bodyguard trailed a respectful distance behind me, since we had so many strangers aboard the ship. So many broken people, I thought. I knew how they felt, because I had been there myself. I hoped they would find some way to find peace, no matter where they went in Survey. "Thank you, Mia," I said in my head. "For what?" he asked. "For making them all citizens," I replied. "You have already thanked me for that, Admiral, more than once." I sighed. I know, but it was a kind and compassionate thing for you to do. I felt agreement from Mia. It would be unkind to send them to Unity, where they would have to struggle just for medical care. No, they will do better with us. Some of the men have expressed an interest in staying on board and learning what we have to teach. I have agreed to let them stay, as long as they continue to talk to our counselors. That's a good idea. Being on your ship worked for me, and if it works for others, that would make me happy. I rounded the corner, near the residential common area, and went into the lounge. I took a few steps into the doorway and stared at the cushion area towards the back of the lounge, where Mark and I had cuddled so many times before we left New Harmony, and at the table where Ray and I had sat and talked so many times late into the night. There was a hole in my heart where both of them should have been. Still, it felt like it was a lifetime ago, and just yesterday. Has it really only been about 3 or 4 years since I was on station? So much has changed, I thought to myself. As I turned to continue my stroll of the ship, a girl came out of nowhere and ran into me. She fell on the floor. "Oh, shit, I'm so sorry," she said. "It's okay," I said with a smile and helped her up. "What are you doing up so late?" "Oh, I wasn't sleeping and I was bored, so I came to get a midnight snack." "Really? Mind if I join you?" I said. "You're Athena, right?" "Yeah, sure," Athena said, then took a good look at me. Her eyes nearly popped out of her head as she recognized me. "Oh my goddess, you're the Admiral!" "Yes, I'm the Admiral, but I'm still human, no matter what my soldiers may think of me," I said. "It's okay, Athena. I'm not going to grow fangs or eat babies. I just want some cake and a mug of hot chocolate." The printer started up, and 2 hot chocolates and 2 pieces of cake appeared. Athena came over, took a plate and her hot chocolate, and sat down at the table. I grabbed mine and sat down with her. I bowed over my plate in a small prayer and then said, "Thanks, Mia," and I began to eat. Who's Mia? Mia is my special name for Musashi-sensei. I'm the only one allowed to call him that, though. "Oh, I like Musashi-sensei. He always answers my questions and never says they're stupid. Sometimes it's easier to ask him things in private. He doesn't yell at me when I mess up." I nodded. He never will, and neither will any of the other AIs. They always answer children's questions. "I'm 16. I'm not a child," she said, looking wildly offended. I managed not to laugh. "I was ready to be initiated into the adult sisterhood if I had stayed on Diana." I stared at her for a few moments, making Athena squirm a little. "No, I suppose you aren't a child anymore, not after what you've been through in the last few weeks." Athena blinked, then ate some of her cake. She didn't look at me for a moment. "Can I ask you a question?" she said. "Yes." "Why did you do what you did to Diana?" "Why did I blow up the libraries and set off the EMP?" Athena nodded. I sighed. "I can't give you too many details because some of it's still classified, but the reason I blew up the libraries and the station was because there was a bad computer program that had infected the servers. We've gotten rid of it on other planets at great cost, but the leaders of Diana didn't allow their special program we created to fight it to be delivered. The man you saw, who threw his data key and Riscom in the alley, was trying to deliver it. But you know what happened to him. The EMP was to ensure that no other tech on Diana could send anything off planet." Athena played with her fork, no longer in the mood for cake. "The women on Diana are evil," she said. "It's not so simple, Athena. Yes, Diana has evil leaders who do evil things, like enslaving men and killing transgender people. Do I believe that all the women on Diana are evil? No. You certainly aren't, since your only fault was being raised by people who have bigoted views. If you were evil, you wouldn't have told my commander what you saw or asked to come here. However, even though there are good people on Diana, they are still allowing evil acts to continue. No matter how nice they are to their slaves, they still own human beings. And even if they have never murdered a transgender person personally, they still have allowed others to kill in their name. The more of that kind of evil is tolerated by good people, the more that evil will persist. Does that mean I'm a bad person? I wasn't nice to men. I didn't know about the transgender stuff until I came here. I shook my head. You only did what you were taught. That wasn't your fault. But now you can learn to do better. Athena was quiet for a while. I waited patiently, eating my cake and finishing off my hot chocolate. After I put my plate in the recycler and came back to the table, she asked, "Did you really used to be a man?" "Yes." "Why did you become a woman?" I took a deep breath. That's also complicated, Athena, and there's a lot that's very personal. The simplest way I can put it is that I knew from a very young age that I was a girl and that my masculine body was wrong. It wasn't easy for me to transition, but when I did, I finally felt like a whole person. Athena looked a bit confused. It's okay if you don't understand. Not everyone can unless you're transgender yourself. Oh, I guess that makes sense, she said. Will you promise me something? I asked. What? I want you to promise me that if you find out someone is transgender or non-binary, that you will always get permission before you ask them questions, and that if they say no, you will respect them and stop asking them anything. Consent is very important in Survey, and not everyone will want to answer your questions. I promise, she said. Is it okay to ask you questions? I nodded. Yes, I said. I don't mind answering them now. I stood up. Well, Athena, I think I've given you more than enough to think about to alleviate your boredom, right? The girl nodded. Good night, then. Don't stay up too late, I said, and headed for the door. Admiral. I stopped and turned around. Thank you for answering my questions. I bowed. You're welcome, Athena. I left the common area and started walking back to my quarters. It will be a difficult life for her for a while, said Mia. I nodded. Yes, it will, I said. The instructors were lined against the mirrored walls. Damien had a wrapped katana in his hands and was chatting with one of the instructors. I stood up, and the room fell silent. Mia, I said, call her in. After a couple of minutes, Amy was let into the dojo. Seeing who was there, she widened her eyes and visibly steeled herself. I kept my face impassive so as not to give anything away. Kneel, warrior, I said. She looked wary, but did as she was told. Georg stood up. Admiral, this warrior has already passed her 9th Dan test, so there is no need to test her further. How did she pass her test? I asked. Damien stood up. She successfully rescued one of our soldiers and liberated slaves from the planet known as Diana. Are all the instructors in agreement? I asked, smiling at the dumbstruck look on Amy's face. Hi, they said in unison. Then let it be known that Amy is now a warrior of the 9th Dan. I motioned Damien forward. He kneeled in front of Amy, holding the sword on his palms. With trembling hands, she opened the cloth. The sword hilt and sheath were black. There was wooden banding on the sheath, with the Japanese characters for Liberator inlaid in gold. The wood on the sheath is from the arrow you took on Diana. Amy looked up at me with wide eyes. She didn't say anything, just bowed, took the sword, and belted it on. Let us take refuge, I said. We all began to recite. May the benefit of our work today and all our work be dedicated unto the complete liberation and the supreme enlightenment of all beings everywhere pervading space and time. May the benefits of practice, ours and others, come to fruition ultimately and immediately, and we remain in the state of presence. So mote it be. I gestured for Amy to stand, and the instructors came forward to congratulate her, then turned to leave. When the last of the instructors filed out, Amy turned to me. The mission was my test? I nodded. It had been a couple decades since you led an on-planet mission, and while it wasn't exactly planned, Mia, myself, and the instructors thought it was enough. Liberator? Bit dramatic, isn't it? She said with a smile. It's not untrue, Amy. 3 years ago you took me in and showed me a world much bigger than I ever expected. You accepted me as I am, and even told me it was possible to have children with my partner. That was the most liberated I'd ever felt about myself. Even though things have changed, I still remember that first night I was here. Amy started crying, and I opened my arms for a hug. We hugged each other tightly for a long moment, and when we finally pulled apart, she wiped her eyes on her sleeves. She cleared her throat, bowed, and said, "Thank you, Admiral." I bowed in return. "You're welcome, Amy of the Ninth Dan." I smiled, then said, "Cake?" Amy laughed and said, "Yes, please." And we left the dojo for the common area. 2 weeks later, we finally arrived at the negotiation coordinates. Athena and many of the former slaves were transferred to Lightbringer. Many of them needed more intensive therapy than Mia's medical staff could provide. In some ways, I was relieved. Athena was relentless in her need for knowledge and would seek me out at all hours to ask questions. While I didn't deny her asking, it had become exhausting, and I was only too happy to let Lucifer and the university have her. I took the day after she left to relax in the quiet of my own quarters before I went to talk to the negotiation team. The days leading up to the negotiations, which were spent studying the ins and outs of Unity survey relations, felt tedious and long. I couldn't fault the team, as they were infinitely patient. But I knew I wasn't cut out for this type of work. I was a soldier, not a diplomat. The night before the talks began, Amy and I had dinner in my quarters. "I don't know what I'm doing," I said to her, as we sat having coffee. "I'm totally out of my depth here." "You've been studying hard, Jenny, and the AIs trust you to complete this. So did the former admiral," she pointed out. "I know, but I'm probably likely to reach across the table and knock this guy in the head if he says something stupid." Amy laughed. "As funny as that would be, I highly doubt that. If you can deal with Athena's constant questions, then you have the patience of a saint." "I suppose so," I grumbled. Amy got up to put her empty cup in the printer. "It'll be fine tomorrow, you'll see," she reassured me, then came over and gave me a hug. "Get some sleep, Admiral." "I'll try," I said. "Thanks, Amy of the Ninth Dan." She grinned at the title, nodded, and left my quarters. I put my own cup in the recycler and got ready for bed. "Lock the door, please, Mia." "Done," Mia said. "Amy is correct. You do have patience, which the former admiral told me is the most important part of any negotiation." I got into bed. "Lights," I said, and the room went dark. "I suppose I still feel young and unprepared for this position, Mia, even after all we've been through in the last few months." "As I mentioned before," Mia started to say, then stopped. "What is it, Mia?" I said, sitting up. "I've just received a message from Hephaestus. Apparently you will have some help, but he says it's a surprise." I could sense annoyance through our link. "Help? I'll take it if it's good help. I'd rather not have help if it makes Unity decide to fire weapons," I said. "I agree, although most of Hephaestus' surprises usually end up being quite useful. I suppose we will find out tomorrow." "I suppose we will. Good night, Mia." "Good night, Admiral." Epilogue. Chapter 51. Giannis. I parked my chair by the door of Mercury's bridge, braked it, and pulled my cane out of its holder. Carefully, I used it to slowly stand up and walk to the center of the room. Compared to other parts of the ship, the bridge wasn't that big. I suppose they don't expect people to spend a lot of time here, with Mercury handling most of the mundane tasks, I thought. I looked at the captain's chair for a moment, then at the blank view screen. "Hello, Giannis. Welcome aboard," said a voice. "I am Mercury." "Hello, Mercury. How are you today?" "I am functioning well, Giannis. My uncle tells me that you would make a good captain for me," he said. "He did?" "Well, it's up to you to decide that, really." "I see. Do you wish to be my captain?" I paused, ordering my thoughts. "Yes, Mercury." "Why?" "Because—" I took a deep breath. "Because people like me don't always get to do amazing things, Mercury. With you, I'll see the stars and new planets and a whole new galaxy. And this ship... Do you understand what an amazing achievement you are? What an amazing ship you are? There was a small series of beeps. You think I'm amazing. I don't understand. How do you explain awe, I thought. Mercury, there's never been anyone or any ship like you before. You'll be carrying humans farther than humans have ever traveled. You'll eventually have children and adults who have never known life off your ship. I think this is even bigger than the Trinity Project, or the original generation ships, or even the founding of Survey. We are doing what humans are truly made for, exploring and learning. What do you mean by people like you? He asked. I'm an incomplete quadriplegic. I think that should be in your medical files. I've recently taken on captain-level bots in order to have greater range of movement. The limitations are that I can never leave flat space and will need to be on an AI ship for the rest of my life. I think, though, with you, it won't be so bad. Yes, I see, but I still don't understand why you said people like me. I took another deep breath. When you're a disabled human, particularly in Unity, and especially when you have to use mobility aids, other humans have a tendency to dismiss you as unintelligent, or not see you as a person at all. To be honest, when I was on Geneva Colony, I wasn't really living my life. I was just surviving from day to day. I had taught at the university, but my real human interaction was limited to having my basic needs met. I didn't leave Geneva until the librarians came for me. I didn't feel or realize until recently that I deserved more. There was silence for a few seconds. Then Mercury said, "May I connect to you?" Yes. Suddenly there was a presence in my mind. Mercury was rummaging through my memories. I didn't stop him from looking, but I had to grip my cane tightly and close my eyes as I watched all of my life go by in less than the time it took to think about a single memory. Just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. I opened my eyes, and there were new readouts in my vision. Yes, my uncle was correct. You and I will make a very good team. We both have our limitations, but we can also do great things. I'm your captain? Didn't I just say that? I laughed out loud. I'd dance if I could, I said. I can feel your joy, Giannis. That is enough. There was a beep. Giannis, one of the security people is bringing someone to see you, now that I have announced that you're my captain to the ship. I smiled. Well, that was fast. Let me get in the captain's chair first before you let them in. I'm feeling a bit tired now. Understood, Mercury said. I made my way to the chair and gratefully sank into it. It was very comfortable, with a good deal of padding on it. Okay, Mercury, let them in, I said. The Musashi guards led a large, blond, nearly black-skinned man onto the bridge. There was something about him that felt familiar. He stared back at me with a twinkle in his eye, even if the rest of his body language said he was irritated. The guard spoke first. Captain, this person just came in on a Unity shuttle from Geneva Colony with about 20 others. Says he was sent here. I nodded. What's your name? I asked. I'm Lazarus Jones. I usually go by Russ, though, since there's a lot of people named Lazarus in my family. My Mama Lazzie said you needed us to come with you. She told me that you already knew we were coming. The memory of the man at the koi pond came back in full. I stared at the man for a moment, then asked, Do you know someone named Legba? The man relaxed and laughed. So, Mama was right. And yes, to answer your question, I do indeed know Legba. I looked at the guard and said, I know who these folks are. Let them on and set them up with quarters. Yes, sir, the guard said and left. Russ, can you tell me about who this Legba is? Papa Legba, and it's a long story. Although if he came to you, then you must have been at the crossroads. A shiver ran down my spine. Yes, I was. I'm not anymore. I know, Rose said. Mama sent me here specifically for you, though. I'm a nurse and a physical therapist. She said you would need me. The rest of us are a mix of specialties. Botanists of necessity, chemists, artists, engineers, and priests. Priests? Kinda goes with the whole Lazarus gig. He paused for a moment. The priests will need a part of the garden area for their shrine. They have seeds they need to plant. Okay. Mercury, can we sort that out? I asked. Yes, Giannis, there is plenty of space. They should choose where they like, and if it's not already allocated, they can go ahead and plant what they need. Well, welcome aboard, I said, standing up slowly. Russ immediately came to my side, acting as a spotter, but didn't touch me. I steadied myself and held out a hand. He took it, and his grip was light but firm. So, I suppose we should have lunch and get to know each other better, since I don't think we'd want to disappoint your mother. Sir, you ain't kidding. Call me Giannis, I said. Russ nodded and readied my chair for me. As I settled myself in, I said to Mercury in my head, I think our trip just got more interesting. I think you are correct, Giannis, he replied, and I could feel joy coming from him. I smiled as we left the bridge. Bill, J.D. You know this is going to freak him out, the three of us meeting alone with him, right? I said. Control and Johnny looked at me, not really comprehending. I sighed. In Unity, when a bunch of bosses want to meet you in a room alone, it's usually because they want to fire you for some perceived offense. Johnny raised an eyebrow. Unity business practices are really cruel, she said. Control nodded. It is based on outdated old Earth paradigms, they said, through their tablet. Well, it's sort of bred into you in Unity, so you'll have to forgive us for the anxiety, I explained. They both nodded. Then the door chimed. Come in, said Control. The door opened and Marcus entered. He was trying to hide the fact that he was nervous, but not really succeeding. The younger man stepped further into the office. Please, have a seat, Control said. I told you, I said to the others. Relax, kid, you're not here to be punished. Marcus opened his mouth to say something, but then shut it again, took a breath, then said, Yes, sir. We've asked you here because we're setting up a new division among the librarians, and we'd like you to run it, said Control. What? Marcus said, surprised. I grinned. Yes, Control continued. We're calling it the Emerging Threats Division. For now, be tasked with finding any copies of the old Chaos programming that survived our countermeasure, but also identifying any similar programming or other threats from Unity. We'd also like to move the team tasked with finding labs, trying to create jump drive technology, to your group. There may be other projects in time, but I think these would be enough to start with. We'd also like you to recruit both Survey and Unity computer experts, since we've always had a hard time finding the right people. We feel that you can successfully find and train others like you to meet our needs. You want me to run a whole division? Marcus said, wide-eyed. Yes, said Johnny. Marcus looked at me. Didn't think you'd get away without a promotion for saving the galaxy, did you? I said. But... Here it comes. J.D., Johnny said with a warning note. Oh, come on, you know how he's going to say that he's too young, then we're going to remind him of all that he's been through, etc., and so on. I rolled my eyes. Just take the job, kid. You know you'll be good at it. Besides, you'll report to me. That made Marcus laugh. That's supposed to be an incentive, sir? He grinned. Johnny's more tyrannical than I am, I pointed out. She narrowed her eyes at me, but didn't contradict the statement. Marcus looked thoughtful for a moment, then his face cleared. All right, I accept. Good, said Sunny finally. I have decided that your title will be Eric Musterman. Marcus groaned. Really? We have too many John names, said Control, who grinned. Marcus shrugged. Well, I suppose that's fair. Johnny stood up and put out a hand. Marcus stood up and took it. Good luck, Eric Musterman. JD will show you where your new offices are and go over scheduling with you. JD, Control, I'll talk with you later. The woman left the room quickly. She's going over to Mercury to help with the final preparations. It was her main project when she was still Jane Doe, and she wants to see it finished, Control said. Mercury? Marcus? Now Eric Musterman asked. I'll explain it to you on the way to your new office, I said. I turned to Control. Dinner later? They smiled. I look forward to it, JD, they said, then put their tablet in their pocket and left through the side door. I walked Eric out of the room, through the door that led to the hallway, and led him down the hall. Marcus shook his head. JD, huh? Like Control said, too many John names. Besides, JD sounds cooler. Marcus laughed, and there was a little edge to it, as if he finally was releasing the last of the tension from the meeting. Well, that's true. I suppose I'll be cooperating with UI as well to ensure the countermeasure completes its task. Yes, David is looking forward to working with you. Apparently he's responding to treatment well and isn't showing any major neurological issues, I said. But it's not a full success, he said. No, son, but it's not a failure either. And yes, there could be more problems down the line from the fallout of chaos. There are still some other lost colonies out there, and we don't know who's had contact with Unity. True, Marcus said. We walked in silence for a bit. Don't worry, you aren't alone, Eric Musterman. We all work together in the gray areas, remember? Marcus was silent for a moment. We definitely do, sir. Good boy. Now, let's get some work done, I said. Yes, sir, Marcus said. You have been listening to Tales from Flat Space. If you want to support me in my writing, there are many ways to do it. Share this podcast, follow me on my Twitch channel, or buy my books. All you have to do is go to revgenapon.net and click on the relevant links. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you next time.